We were talking earlier about inaccurate or false statements, and shifting to the role of the professional and their knowledge of what they should be doing.
Yeah.
There was an incident, there was a statement about how I had manipulated the CPS records.
How did you manipulate the CPS records?
Well, I didn't.
I know, but I'm saying, how is it possible for you to do that?
Well, it falls...
Are you also a hacker or some type of a cyber sleuth that I don't know about?
Well, it falls under, I think, we've heard so many stories about CPS and their malfunctioning at times and how they've had to defend themselves in court. And I think one of the things that we experienced was a lack of due process with CPS. Mm-hmm. And so, whenever there's an injury to the child or there's an allegation of an injury to a child, you either go directly to law enforcement or to CPS, and they both collaborate because the law enforcement has CPS liaisons and vice versa. So I think what people forget is that injury to a child is the allegation of a criminal behavior, obviously, and that falls under appropriate due process. So just because there's this label that's not law enforcement, I think it's easy to forget that this other entity also has to follow due process. And when they don't, it's important to bring it to their attention and to bring it to everybody's attention because you have a right to due process like anybody else.
Right.
And so if you discover that and then that's corrected, and they end up dropping the case, CPS has certain guidelines to follow because in 2 legislative sessions they established new legislation of how to have people's names removed. Because you don't have to walk around. I mean, imagine yourself having some complaint or somebody else having some complaint. It's unfounded. Nothing ever happened. But yet, in any, what do they call, background check, you always have that tag on you, so to speak. And that's not fair or rightful for the person for employment reasons. So they developed a process to help eliminate that and remove the record. And any professional that's involved as a forensic is knowledgeable, would know this process. But this process obviously was not known by Alissa Sherry. So she made statements that were false related to this process. There were other false statements that were obviously false, in which she had the documentation to, in which she made all these, what's described to as a character, one of the experts described it as a character assassination. What was really interesting in our case was that, as I said earlier, we were, started around January. She said she was about finished in September. I just had to do the final interview, and then on several occasions she went on vacation. That prolonged the process. And then at the time, my attorney and I were wondering, well, we're going to have this final interview. Let's get this thing done. We had a hearing in August of 2021 under Catherine Mauzy, and her rulings weren't even connected to the facts. And so one of the things that came out with opposing counsel was that we were these fathers' rights advocates, we were card-carrying members. And I'm not a card-carrying member of any rights group. That doesn't mean I'm not supportive of equal rights. I'm not adverse to that, but I'm just an independent advocate. And my attorney at the time wasn't a member of Fathers' Rights Group. But that was used to incite Judge Mauzy, and that was very obvious. And she made these rulings that were disconnected from the facts, and these statements that were disconnected from the facts, and even changed her ruling in mid-sentence.
That sounds nuts.
And so we were very concerned about that, and so we filed for recusal, and she was recused. And then what we later found out was that when Catherine Mauzy was an attorney, we found out she was an attorney.
Yeah.
She was a family attorney in the Austin area for several years. And we found out that she had actually hired as an attorney Alissa Sherry 9 separate times. Well, it takes a lot of communication between an evaluator and the attorneys involved, depending on how long the case goes on.
Yeah.
So it would be reasonable to question whether or not there was a pre-existing relationship.
Yeah.
And whether that, okay, so then we
Well,
had
without a doubt there was.
Okay, well, so Judge Mauzy was recused in December on our case. The report came out January 20th.
After she'd been recused.
After she had been recused.
Okay.
And mind you, she said she was almost finished 4 months earlier in September.
Yeah, yeah.
79 pages worth. So it brings the question of, was there other influences going on in the finalization of that report?
Got it. So, but you also said too that with Alissa Sherry, she's acting as an agent of the court.
Mm-hmm.
She's providing a report to the court.
For the court.
For the court.
For the court. And the agreed order was signed by Catherine Mauzy.
What's that?
The agreed order for
Yeah.
the child custody evaluation was signed by Catherine Mauzy on September the 20th of 2020.
Okay. But the report contains, according to some people, it's a character assassination.
It was described as that, yeah.
It was described as character assassination. There were things obviously were at very least biased, if not blatantly untrue.
Mm-hmm.
So my question that I kind of alluded to earlier, and maybe I didn't know if I could do this or not, but should her report not be ruled as slander or perjury of some sort?
Well,
because she's submitting a document to the court that is obviously, if she's knowing that it's intentionally not true to be, if all of these things are observations are true, why would she not be found liable for perjury of some sort?
Well, what is of public knowledge already is that opposing counsel attached her report to his motions. So what is of public knowledge already is that if an attorney signed off on a motion, they've signed off to the entity of the motion, including all exhibits and attachments, as true to the judiciary.
Okay, so that puts him at risk then too. Okay.
Yeah, it's like me, signing off any document in my field.
Yeah.
If I've signed off to a document and I have all of these attached lab figures and stuff, I'm saying this is true and correct.
Yeah.
It's like signing off on your IRS form. So that report's in the public domain.
Yeah.
Now, according to the penal code, aggravated perjury is once you testify to a false statement to the tribunal. That's aggravated perjury.
Yeah, and what I also hear you say, so that's, but perjury gets prosecuted in Texas all the time, right?
With intent, yeah.
Yeah, but what I also hear you saying is that, and I keep on hearing you, because you as a professional, you're in this, in your field, you have a very high level of competence and integrity that you must maintain. It does not, and accuracy for the facts, to the facts, and adherence to them. And it sounds like child custody evaluators do not have that same standard.
Obviously, in the report pertaining to our case, it does not.
Okay.
I
know you're qualifying everything, like with regard to what you've seen here, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it's fine. But let's say
no, but I think that's good because what you're not saying, you're not just generalizing, you're not speaking outside of the realm of your knowledge. You're speaking about with the particular case that you know, which is the case that is.
Yeah, so you're trying. Yeah, so I'm trying to be very factual.
Right,
so
right,
I can
exactly.
support what I'm saying with facts.
Right, right.
So if I'm questioned, I can show the documentation.
Yeah.
And it's clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that your question also kind of goes back to are there personal issues that are impairing the professional functioning and her perceptions?
Yeah.
By her tweets and her blogs, and it appears that that's a reasonable question to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yes. Well, we can.